Howdy-ho, Andrew here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Oilers. So, wow, was I wrong about the playoffs? It looks like Vegas, they're one game away from sweeping the Colorado Avalanche. I didn't see that coming at all. I thought Colorado would take it in, I think I said 5. So, yeah, just don't know what's going on. Torts has got them playing. Didn't see it coming. On the flip side, it's like, I don't know what they're feeding Montreal, but they just won't die. You know, I'm still hoping Carolina gets through, but Montreal, that's going to go 7. That series is going to go 7. You got to think if Vegas sweeps Colorado, it's going to be a pretty easy final for Vegas. I mean, one team will have gone 7 and being banged up. The other team will have big rest. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I haven't been watching it, but watching the scores and the highlights, but about that. I have been watching the World Championship, and I'm frustrated with the Edmonton media, and I'm always frustrated with the Edmonton Toxics. Darnell Nurse, Dylan Holloway, Connor Brown have had an excellent World Hockey Championships. They've been fantastic in their roles, you know, and you have to adjust for what role they're playing, but in the roles that they are playing, they have been absolutely fantastic. Bouchard, he's had 3 good games and 2 average games. So I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm not saying he's been playing bad because he hasn't been, you know, but he's had 3 good games based on his role. What is expected of him? He's had 3 good games and 2 average games. Want to know who the media talks about nonstop and the Toxics talk about nonstop? Bouchard. You never hear about Nurse, positively anyway. Brown, Holloway. Hell, I haven't even heard about Ekholm, who's also having a fantastic series for Sweden. Ike Howard has earned pretty good praise from the commentators, but as soon as you get into the Edmonton market, it's silent. There, you don't hear a word again. And Szymanski is playing for Germany, so you really got to temper your expectations. Germany does not have Leon this year, so they are close to the bottom of the rungs. So Szymanski seems to be having a decent tournament, but again, you have to weigh what his team can really do. So all the Oilers are doing fine, or ex-Oilers are doing fine, but we never hear about any of the Oilers or ex-Oilers. We only hear about Bouchard, and this is what drives me nuts in this market. There is more than one player in the World Championships for the Edmonton Oilers that we should be focused on. But our local media is so freaking biased. We have become the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Western Conference, and that's not a compliment. That's not a compliment whatsoever. That is the opposite of what you want from your media or your fan base. So, yeah. Anyway, like I said, Nurse, Holloway, and Brown in their roles have been excellent for Team Canada. Bouchard's been good. Like, he's had 3 really good games and 2 average games. So we haven't seen the big glaring mistakes from Bouchard that was plaguing him all regular season and throughout the entire playoff run of one round. But, you know, like, Bouchard cost us 2 of the games. Wallman cost us 1 of the games. You only get to lose 4 games and you're out. So that was 3 of the games right there on 2 players. So, yeah, anyway, that's what's going on the hockey side of things. What I want to talk about this week is the team design, because it's been the big topic of discussion on the radio and everything, you know, who are we going to trade and blah, blah, blah. Even Jason Gregor finally came out and said to the Nurse haters, it's like, you idiots. And like, he didn't call them idiots, but he came that close. Like, you could see he wanted to. And he basically came out and said, you idiots that are pushing for Nurse to get traded for nothing, how does that help the team? And he's right. And I've been saying this for a while. You trade Nurse, well, because of the toxics of our organization or our fan base, and because of the local media like Bob Stauffer, and because of Stan Bowman and what Stan Bowman and Chris Knobloch did to Darnell this past year, you're not going to get full worth for Darnell. You guys have guaranteed that even if we trade Darnell, we are going to get only a portion back of what he's worth. Darnell Nurse is not a bad defenseman by any stretch of the imagination. him and Murphy were our two best defensemen in the playoffs by a huge margin, a massive margin. And just because you trade Darnell out doesn't mean you're going to get somebody back in of equal value or ability. I keep saying this. Darnell Nurse is an elite two-way defenseman. And what that means is he's not an elite offensive defenseman. He's not an elite defensive defenseman, but he's way above average in both. And those are super hard to find. So, now the toxics in the local media, they're, well, do we have to sweeten the pot to trade Nurse? So what are we talking here? So we're going to diminish the team even more, get a reduced return just so you can get rid of his contract so that Bowman can blow it on more stuff we don't need. Small players and non-impact players. And it's like, because Bowman's already come out and said he's not going to change this team much. So if you move Darnell out, it's 99% guaranteed whatever you replace him with is going to be a lesser player. It's like today I was listening to Jason today, and Jason was saying, well, Kulak. Well, first off, why would Kulak come back? Seriously. He got packaged with Skinner for no reason at all. And now he's with the Colorado Avalanche, who Colorado's going to be a contender for a number of years still. This is not their final run at the cup, So, and apparently they love Kulak. They're not going to undermine him and demand he be traded like the Toxics were doing here. So why would Kulak come back? More than likely, Kulak's going to re-sign with Colorado. And even if he didn't, even if Kulak did sign in Edmonton, we know Kulak is a 5'6" defenseman. He's not a 2-3 guy. He can fill in on the 2-3, but he proved over the last 2 years he can't play in the 2-3 slot for long stretches. He does well in a few short stretches, but then it tapers off because of his age. So much as I like Brent Kulak, he's not a replacement for Nurse. The other two names that Gregor, I can't even remember. The one of them's probably what we will get, and I'll get to that, is neither of them were replacements for Nurse. Like neither of them are, they're about 60% of what Nurse is. So it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. But I still expect Nurse will get traded because of the Toxics and the local media. And when that happens, I'm really not sure we're even going to make the playoffs next year. I'm being dead honest with the way this team is going under Bowman. There's a lot of intangibles. We'll have to wait and see. But just based on what Bowman did last year and knowing that he won't get equal value for Nurse, it just makes our team weaker. If there's a player that needs to be traded out of Edmonton on our defense, it's Jake Wallman. But he just signed the big contract, so he's not getting traded. And this is the other problem, is these Toxics that want Nurse out, they want to bring in an offensive defenseman. Well, we already got Bouchard, we already got Wallman, and we already got Schultz, who's this number 7 guy, but he's an offensive number 7 guy. So we're already got too many offensive defensemen, and they want to bring in another one. Well, if our goalies are getting lit up with Nurse on the ice, our goalies are going to get lit up even more, losing Nurse and replacing them with an offensive guy. And that's just the simple truth of the matter. I know some people out there don't like truth and they like to live in their fairy tale lands, but that's just the simple truth of the matter. I've said this so many times. There is more to hockey than just offense, and Darnell Nurse is an important cog in the non-offensive role of the Edmonton Oilers. And what makes it even more frustrating is we finally got him a partner since CC. They moved CC out, and Darnell has been hammered with just the worst partners over the last couple of years. And he's never complained, and he's made the best of it, but let's call a spade a spade. He's been hammered with the absolute worst partners. Finally, we brought in Murphy, who can play with them. And suddenly they were our best pairing, bar none. So why do we want to break up our best pairing for the Toxics and for the local media like Bob Stauffer? I do not understand this, but I know Bowman will do it. Bowman seems very wishy-washy, lacks a spine to me, so I know he will sacrifice Nurse to pacify the Toxics of the fan base and the local media when, like with Bob Stauffer, all you got to do is throw him a dozen donuts and he'll be pacified. You don't need to trade any players. So anyway, that's what that's looking like. I'm looking at the team and I don't see how we get better. I really don't. They're talking about bringing up Ike Howard. Well, we're already small. We're already soft. And now they're going to, and no offense to Howard, because I think Howard should have been up and Savoy should have been in the minors last year. But unless Howard can come in on a top 6 role and score like Patrick Kane, I don't see him making much of an impact. And hopefully he can score like that. That's his forte, and hopefully there's some good news out of there. But more than likely, I see him being put on a 3rd or 4th line, and we already saw how that works this year. Savoy and Howard cannot play on the 3rd and 4th line. They are not physical enough. They are not big enough. They are not. And Rosevich too, though it looks like Rosevich is not going to be re-signed, which I also think is a mistake. Because out of those 3, Rosevich is the most proven scorer of the 3. So are we playing favorites, or are we making decisions on what's best for the team? What's best for the team, you take those 3 small players, you send 2 of them to the minors, you keep Rosevich. That's what's best for the team. I think what's going to happen is they're going to trade, or not trade Rosevich because he's a free agent. They're going to let Rosevich walk, and they're going to put Howard and Savoy on the team, and I don't see it working. I saw a thing recently where it's like, how would you rate Matt Savoy's first season in the NHL? C+ or C- from me. He showed no chemistry with McDavid. Contrary to the media trying to tell you he had it, he was invisible for 90% of the regular season when he was up in the top 6. He had a few games where he scored, but if you go back and look, all of those games were against the bottom of the rung teams. So we're talking teams that are just above the AHL level. So Matt Savoy can score at the AHL level, but there's no indication that he can score at the NHL level yet. None. Unless he's playing a bottom rung team, which is there's only a few of those. So, otherwise he's invisible. So he gets shifted to the 3rd and 4th line. Well, he was useless. Spade is a spade. He was freaking useless on the 3rd line. He was useless on the 4th line. I'm sorry, but he was. He's too small, no physicality, no intensity. He stands. And yeah, he shot the puck out of our zone a few times, but he doesn't have that grit, that passion, that intensity that we saw in Theo Fleury. I always say, if you're going to be undersized in the NHL, you need to either score like Patrick Kane, or you need to show the intensity and the passion of Theo Fleury. You need to do one or both of those things. If you can't do either of them, you have no reason to be in the NHL as an undersized player. And that's how Matt Savoy comes across to me. I don't know the guy. I might be a super nice guy for all I know. Very possible. I am talking hockey. And yeah, but the local media has convinced people that he's a bona fide star in the top 6. No, he wasn't. Like I said, 90% of the games, he was invisible. Had no impact in it whatsoever. And the other 10% was against bottom rung teams. And yeah, he got a hat trick against the last place team of the league at the end of the season when they weren't even trying. I mean, you got to look at the situation and scenario on which it happened. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very down on this team right now. And I don't want to be, but I am. I don't see how we move forward with Stan Bowman as GM. I'm just going to call a spade. I don't. New coach should help depending on who we get, but I'll wait till we hire somebody and I'll call it then. But as long as Stan Bowman's making the trades, I just don't see how this team gets better. You listen to Bob Stauffer, oh, well, he's working on the AHL. How about working on the frickin' NHL team first? Seriously, we barely made the playoffs. And that's not an exaggeration. We were 1 point ahead of the Anaheim Ducks, and we were only a few points ahead of the wildcard spots. We had a horrible regular season last year, and much of that is Knobloch's coaching, but much of that was the team that Bowman gave Knobloch, because they worked hand in hand to underwhelm this team. They moved out all the passion, all the intensity, all the grinders, and they brought in soft, small, undersized players. So this is what we have moving forward. And now Bowman's come out and said he's going to keep the team the way it is with only a few tweaks. And the tweaks he keeps talking about are even more undersized small players. So I don't see how this team gets better. Come into the comments. Tell me, how does this team get better with what we have heard from Stan Bowman and the Oilers? Because I don't see how it happens. Anyway, That's my video for this week. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share, it does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Takes 1 second to subscribe, costs you absolutely nothing, helps me immensely. Just hit the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen. If you're watching this on Rumble or Instagram, please follow my channels. Always feel free to leave a comment. I encourage everybody to leave a comment. Not only does it get us interacting, it really does help me with the YouTube algorithm and getting more eyes on my videos. And as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.